It was the summer of 1994 in a quiet Midwestern town called Maplewood. The streets were lined with oak trees. Kids played baseball until sunset, and most people left their doors unlocked. Nothing ever happened here, or at least that's what the residents thought. Emily Carter was 24 years old, a bright young woman with long auburn hair and a smile that seemed to light up every room. She worked at the local library and was saving money for graduate school. Friends described her as responsible and down to earth, the type who always showed up on time and never broke a promise. On the evening of July 17, 1994, Emily left the library just after 8 p.m. Security cameras caught her locking the front doors, waving goodbye to a co-worker, and walking toward her car parked in the lot across the street. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. For a while, it seemed as if she simply vanished into thin air. Her car was found to blocks away from the library with the engine still running and her purse and glasses left inside. An all-points bulletin was issued, but there were no signs of a struggle and no witnesses came forward. The police were stumped, and Emily's worried family and friends took it upon themselves to search for her. They put up hundreds of posters offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to dwindle. Then a breakthrough. A resident reported finding some women's clothing in a wooded area near Emily's home. The clothes were sent to the lab, and the results were inconclusive. The investigation hit another snag when the lead detective fell ill and had to take a leave of absence. With each passing day, the public's interest in the case waned and the pressure mounted on the police to close it. In the end, they did, but not in the way anyone expected. 4 months after Emily's disappearance, her mother received a call from the police. They had found Emily's body in the same wooded area where the clothes had been found. She had been strangled, but there was no evidence of a sexual assault. To this day, the case remains unsolved, which might have been the case for even longer had it not been for one crucial piece of evidence: the security camera footage. You can watch more true crime stories like this one. The next morning, when Emily didn't show up for her shift at the local ice cream parlor, her boss assumed that she was sick. It wasn't like her to miss work, and she never let her shift go without telling someone. So when her parents couldn't reach her either, they began to worry. By noon, the police were notified and a search party was organized. It wasn't long before the investigators found Emily's blue Honda Civic still parked across from the library where she'd been seen the evening before. Her purse sat on the passenger seat untouched. The keys were missing, but there were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no blood, nothing out of place. It was as if Emily had vanished into thin air. Her mother collapsed onto the grass in the front yard, sobbing uncontrollably. The police tried their best to comfort her, but there was nothing they could say that would ease her pain. They brought in a K-9 unit to search the area, but the dog only picked up Emily's scent near her car, and it led them back to the library. Inside the building, they found the book that Emily had been reading. It was an old copy of Jane Eyre, one of her favorites. The investigator felt a sense of dread wash over him. He knew that if they couldn't find Emily soon, her chances of survival would diminish with every passing moment. He turned to her father, who stood by the window overlooking the street. "Mr. Peterson," he began, his voice heavy with sympathy, "we're going to need to ask you some questions about your daughter's friends. She didn't have any enemies that we know of, so it must have been someone she knew." Mr. Peterson shook his head, his face ashen. "She was a good girl, always had time for her friends, never missed a birthday. If she thought something was wrong, she'd tell me. She never kept secrets." As the investigation continued, the only lead they had was a grainy security camera capturing the image of a man walking next to Emily's car. He appeared to be in his 30s with a shaved head and a goatee. But despite the numerous tips that came in, none of them led to a positive identification. Days turned into weeks, then months, but still there was no sign of Emily Peterson. The case went from active to inactive, then cold. The search parties became less frequent, the media attention died down, and the mystery of Emily's disappearance became a local legend, a cautionary tale whispered among the townspeople. But her parents refused to give up hope. Every day they visited the library, hoping against hope that their daughter would walk through the doors with a big smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief. But as the seasons changed and the leaves turned from green to gold to brown, they realized that this day would never come. And so they turned to the only other thing that gave them solace, the belief that their daughter was in a better place now, free from pain and suffering, looking down on them with love and compassion. Or perhaps she was simply waiting for the right moment to reveal herself, to say, "I'm okay, I'm still here," just to ease their pain. In the early hours of June 1996, a young woman named Emily vanished without a trace from a small town in North Carolina. Her car was found abandoned at the side of the road, her keys still in the ignition. But despite an extensive search, not a single clue could be found as to what had happened to her. And in the days that followed, conflicting reports emerged, casting doubt on the timeline of events leading up to her disappearance. The first came from a man who was closing up his diner nearby. He told the police he saw Emily talking to someone by her car at 8:15 p.m. The man described the person she was talking to as a tall man in a dark jacket, but he couldn't see his face clearly. This account was backed up by another woman who was walking her dog. She told the detective she thought she heard a car door slam and tires screeching around the same time, but she wasn't sure. Now, the problem with these accounts is they place Emily at her car at the same time every night. So which one of these is true? Well, let's start with the diner owner. He's a reliable witness who's at the same spot every night at 8:15 closing up shop. It would be unusual for him to mistake the time or misremember what he saw. Plus, why would someone harm Emily right in front of him? It would have been crazy. Even more suspicious, though, is the fact that the diner owner couldn't see the man's face. Why was he only described as a tall man in a dark jacket? Was it because it was dark already and the man was hiding his face in the shadows? Or was it because the diner owner never actually saw him? After all, if he really did see a man talking to Emily, why didn't he come out and stop him? No, instead he just watched as Emily got into her car and drove off. But then there's the woman walking her dog. If we believe her, then Emily was at her car at 8:15 talking to a mysterious man. But when the woman walking her dog heard a car door slam and tires screech, it means that Emily had already driven off. In that case, the diner owner must have seen her earlier, but where were they now? Had they gone somewhere else to meet up with the man in the dark jacket? Unfortunately, this was the mid-1990s, no smartphones, no GPS trackers, and very few surveillance cameras. Without any way of knowing exactly where Emily went after speaking to the diner owner, it's impossible to say for sure what happened to her. All we can do is follow the facts of the case and explore the possibilities. Was the diner owner lying about seeing Emily? Maybe he was trying to protect her. Maybe he didn't want to get involved. Or perhaps he saw everything, but in the 2 decades since, he's simply misremembered what he saw. As for the woman walking her dog, she could be mistaken too. After all, we don't know how long she was walking her dog or how far away she was from Emily's car. Maybe she just wants to be involved, but doesn't know any more than the rest of us. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts below. And as always, thanks for watching. The disappearance of Emily. As with most disappearances, investigators started by looking at people closest to Emily, her ex-boyfriend, Mark Daniels. They had broken up 2 months earlier. Some friends described him as jealous and controlling. Police questioned him extensively, but he had an alibi. He was working a night shift at the gas station across town. Several customers confirmed seeing him there. But what about the man Emily had confided in? The one she'd told about the creepy guy at the library? Co-workers remembered a man who had been spending hours in the library in the weeks leading up to Emily's disappearance. He often stared at her and made her uncomfortable. Police released a sketch based on her description, but no one ever identified him. Then there was the random abduction theory. Maplewood was near a major highway and transient crimes weren't unheard of. People traveling through the area for the annual Texas Motor Speedway race could easily have abducted Emily, or maybe she'd gotten into a car with a stranger and willingly gone somewhere. Despite all these angles, nothing solid emerged. Months turned into years and the case grew colder. Was it a dead end? Then in 2018, a break? A woman contacted the police claiming she had information about Emily's disappearance. She told detectives that she and her husband had been at the library the night Emily vanished, and when they left, they saw a man matching the sketch we'd gotten from Emily's co-worker carrying a large black duffel bag. He was alone. He had been the only person who signed out Emily's favorite books the day she disappeared. And now this. The husband and wife had never come forward before because they didn't want to get involved. But after hearing about the suspicious circumstances surrounding Emily's disappearance, the wife began to have second thoughts. She knew she had to do something. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was intuition. Whatever it was, it led her to the right place at the right time. When officers showed up at their house to interview them, the couple agreed to let them search their property. They even brought in a cadaver dog. What they found was a pair of women's shoes hidden in the garage. The missing girl's shoes? This is Detective Alex. Do you have a case you want me to look at? Go to the website below to submit your ideas. The mystery deepens. 3 weeks after Emily disappeared, her parents received an anonymous letter. The handwriting was shaky, and the message read, "She's with me." Don't look for her, no ransom demand, no details, just those 3 terrifying sentences. The police were able to rule out one of Emily's classmates as a suspect, a boy she'd been arguing with before she vanished. His handwriting was in the system from a previous crime, but it wasn't a match. This had to be whoever had taken her, but why send the letter now? And why send it to her parents instead of the police? They went to the lab to see if they could get anything more from the note. Maybe there was something in the ink or the paper that would give away who wrote it. But when the results came back, it was another dead end. The ink was old, the paper recycled, nothing unusual. It was as if the letter had come from another time. One investigator said it might be a red herring, some cruel hoax by someone following the news. Another thought it was the kidnapper trying to taunt them, trying to break them. But why? They hadn't given up hope. They'd never given up hope. I'm going to find her. I don't care how long it takes. I'll walk every street, every town, every city until I find her. Until I find him, it's like he vanished into thin air. No sign of a struggle. Whoever took him knew what they were doing. They prepared for this moment, planned for this moment. And then the detective noticed something in the bushes, something that looked like a discarded cigarette pack. He pulled it out and brushed off the dirt. It was a brand he recognized. It was the same brand the boy who liked Emily had brought to school that day, the one he'd been smoking behind the bike sheds. Could this be a coincidence? Was this just an elaborate prank gone wrong? Or was it the twisted game of a killer? 3 weeks is a long time to hide a body. If they took her somewhere secluded, somewhere hidden, well, the woods are big enough to hide a secret. They searched all day, but they didn't find her. They found animal bones, lots of animal bones, but no Emily. Then they got a call from the forensics team. They finally got a hit on the fingerprints from the letter. It was a match, but it wasn't supposed to be. That person should be dead. There are some places you just can't go back to, people you just can't forget. It had been 5 years since the day Emily vanished. 5 years since the whole town of Maplewood had been turned upside down. By the end of the summer, Maplewood was no longer the same peaceful town. Parents stopped letting their children walk home alone. Women carried pepper spray. Every stranger became a person of interest. Vigils were held, candles lit in front of the library where Emily was last seen. Her photograph, smiling in her graduation cap, was taped to lampposts and grocery store windows. But weeks turned into months and months into years. No new evidence surfaced, no phone calls, no sightings. The case went cold, but here's the thing about small towns. Just because the headlines fade away doesn't mean the story ends. In fact, it just means the story begins for those left behind. For the parents who never stopped searching, for the friends who kept the memories alive, for the sister who grew up without her best friend, for the boyfriend who still loved her, for the town that refused to forget. Every day, 5 years later, on the anniversary of her disappearance, they held a vigil. Every day they put out a balloon, 5 white balloons, one for each year. 5 years of unanswered questions, 5 years of hollowed-out smiles and whispered prayers. And then there's me. I moved away the day after Emily disappeared. I left Maplewood, took the long way around, drove right through the night so I wouldn't have to see the morning light. I didn't want to see the whispers, the looks, the pity. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone thinking I was responsible, even though I wasn't. Even though we all knew I wasn't. 5 years later, I'm back. I'm back because I have to clear my name, find out what really happened to Emily, and maybe, just maybe, bring a little bit of justice to a town that has been living in fear for far too long. You ever wonder what it's like to be a small town? To be someone who isn't just a face in the crowd, but a name. To be part of a community where everyone knows your name and everyone knows your story. I did until I left. Now I'm back and I'm ready to listen, to learn, to find out what really happened here. Because sometimes the truth is the only way to set people free. 3 theories about what happened to missing persons. Emily Cooper went missing in 1997. The last person who saw her alive was a library patron. He became the prime suspect in the case, but there was one problem. No one knew his name. He'd come into the library every week to use the computers, but he was always careful to wipe the data from the system after each use. Even the librarian couldn't remember his name, just that he was a regular. So the theory that he killed Emily became the stalker theory. Maybe he'd followed her home from the library and lured her into his car. But without a name, he was a ghost. The police couldn't find him and the case went cold. Years later, a local man came forward claiming that he'd seen a fight between Emily and her ex-boyfriend, Mark, the day she disappeared. Mark worked at a video game store, but some people still suspected him of killing Emily. If he had enough time, he could have slipped away from his shift and abducted her. So the ex-boyfriend theory lingered in the minds of the townsfolk, even though Mark had an alibi. But what if someone from Emily's past had something to do with her disappearance? She'd grown up in a small town, but as she got older, she started traveling more. In the mid-90s, several young women vanished while traveling along highways. The police eventually caught up with the killer, a long-haul truck driver. He confessed to abducting and murdering 51 women, including Emily, so the highway killer theory was put to rest. All 3 theories about what happened to Emily are explored in the series, along with many others. In 1999, 5 years later, hikers discovered a set of bones in a wooded area 30 miles from Maplewood. The bones were found near a popular hiking trail in a rural part of the state. At the time, the area was not easily accessible, which is why it took so long for them to be found. And even when they were discovered, it wasn't clear if they were even human. When the police returned to the site to do a more thorough search, they found more bones and some personal belongings, a driver's license, and a check register. The name on the driver's license was Tiffany McLeod. She had been reported missing in 1994. Her car had been found abandoned on the side of a highway, but her body had never been recovered. The police used this new evidence to obtain a warrant to search the rest of the area. They brought in forensic experts to help locate any other bones that may have been scattered around the area. Over the next few weeks, they slowly uncovered more and more remains, enough to confirm that there had been a young woman who had been brutally murdered. But as the investigation continued, it became clear that these bones did not belong to Emily. In fact, they didn't belong to any of the missing persons that they had been searching for. All of the bones found in this area were from another missing person's case entirely. To this day, no one knows what happened to Emily. She vanished without a trace and her body has never been found. The police have no suspects and the case remains open. I can't help but wonder if Emily's family ever heard about the bones that were found in the woods. Did they get any closure knowing that at least some of the missing persons in their area had been found, even if it wasn't Emily? Or were they angry that the police were focusing on other cases and letting Emily's go cold? What do you think happened to Emily? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time. It's been 30 years since 17-year-old Emily Carter was last seen alive. And today we're going to revisit the case. On April 1992, just 3 months before her 18th birthday, Emily left her home in South Dakota for what would have been the last time. She told her mother, "I love you," which was unusual because they often fought. Her mother, Susan, didn't know it at the time, but those would be the last words she ever spoke to her daughter. After graduating high school, Emily planned to attend college in Minnesota and had recently been accepted into the nursing program. She was excited about the future and had even bought an outfit to wear to her first class, but that first class never happened. When Emily didn't show up for her classes, she was reported missing. The police began searching for her, but there was little evidence to go on. A few weeks after she disappeared, her car was found abandoned near a mall. Inside the car, they found some of her belongings, including her shoes and coat. This suggested that she'd left voluntarily and perhaps had been planning to move somewhere else. But that didn't make sense. Why would she abandon her car and not tell anyone? Her parents never gave up hope, even after the police did. They moved to Florida to start a new life, hoping to put the painful memories behind them. But wherever they went, Emily seemed to follow. People would call them and say they'd seen her in California, North Dakota, even Alaska. The sightings gave the parents hope, but each time it turned out to be a dead end. It's been 30 years now, and the case remains unsolved. The detectives who once worked on it still talk about it with frustration. True crime enthusiasts discuss it on internet forums. Some believe that Emily ran away and is living under a false identity. Others think foul play was involved, but without a body or a confession, the case will never be closed. So, what really happened to Emily Carter? Was it an abduction, a runaway, or something else? We may never know. But one thing is certain, the silence is the most haunting part of all. Thank you for watching this episode. If you like true crime stories, stay tuned for more. On an ordinary evening in 1994, a young woman named Emily Carter left her workplace and started the 20-minute walk home. It was a route she'd taken countless times before. But this time something was different. That evening, Emily vanished. What happened to her that night is still a mystery. And even 28 years later, no one can say for sure if she's alive or dead. Hi, I am here to talk about an unsolved mystery that has haunted the small town of Maplewood for nearly 3 decades. The disappearance of Emily Carter is not just a mystery. It's a reminder of how fragile safety can be, even in the most ordinary places. One evening, a young woman walked to her car and in the blink of an eye, she was gone. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle, and no goodbye. Her keys, phone, and wallet were found on the passenger seat of her car, along with her jacket, which she always wore when it was cold outside. But Emily was nowhere to be seen. In the days that followed, hundreds of volunteers joined the search, combing through the woods and fields near Emily's home. But as the weeks turned into months, hope began to fade. Was this a case of a runaway teenager, a tragic accident, or something more sinister? The police never received a ransom call, a threat, or a single tip, and Emily S. family was left to wonder if she simply vanished without a trace or if someone had hurt her and left her somewhere, hoping that she would never be found. But Emily's story didn't end there. Her memory lives on in the town of Maplewood, where residents still talk about the case and wonder what happened to her. Every year, they hold a candlelight vigil in her honor, and her picture hangs in the local diner, a constant reminder of the young woman who never came home. It's a story that has captured the attention of many, including filmmaker David Decito, who produced a documentary about the case. As he worked on the film, he interviewed Emily's friends, family, and even the police, trying to piece together what happened. But even he admitted that some questions are left unanswered. Perhaps someday new technology, DNA advances, or a long-buried confession will reveal what truly happened that night in 1994. Until then, Emily remains a name on a missing persons list, a face on a faded poster, and a question mark that Maplewood will never forget. Thank you for watching this episode. If you have a story that you'd like to share, please contact the production company. You can also check out other videos about unexplained mysteries.